All right, let's dive in. This time, we're going deep with Eckhart Tolle and the Law of One.
Oh, this is going to be fascinating.
Yeah, I think so too. Present moment awareness, the ego, this cosmic law of unity.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we even begin?
Wait, it's interesting how two sources that seem so different can actually complement each other so well.
No. Yes, Ida.
Like Tully, very practical approach to, spiritual growth. And then you have the raw material, super metaphysical, exploring consciousness.
Yeah.
And there are some surprising parallels there.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with Tolle. He talks a lot about, escaping what he calls enslavement to the mind. And he gives us these techniques focusing on the breath, noticing physical sensations. Have you ever actually, tried any of that
I
stuff?
have. And it's amazing how quickly it can shift your attention to the present moment, like right then and there.
Yeah.
And that's Tully's whole point, right? That enlightenment isn't some far off goal. It's right here, right now.
Right.
We can just quiet the mental chatter.
Yeah.
And this idea of felt oneness he keeps coming back to. Well, that aligns perfectly with the core of the law of one, that all things are one.
Right. It's like we're so busy thinking, overthinking, that we totally miss the richness of now.
Hmm.
Tolle calls it psychological time, this obsession with the past, the future. And he says it actually prevents us from fully experiencing life.
And a lot of that mental noise he attributes to, the egoic mind, that voice in our heads,
Hmm.
constantly analyzing, comparing, worrying, creating this screen of judgments and labels that obscures, well, our true nature, really. Does that resonate with you at all?
Absolutely. It's that constant inner critic, right?
Hmm.
Never satisfied. And Tolle says the more we identify with that egoic mind, the more we suffer.
Yes. And the raw material echoes this, interestingly.
Oh.
They talk about how negative thoughts, negative emotions, they create what they call distortions, which actually hinder spiritual growth.
Hmm.
It's like both Tolle and the raw material, they're pointing to the same truth. Our mental and emotional clutter keeps us trapped in these cycles of suffering.
Yeah. So how do we break free?
Right.
Because Tolle talks about reclaiming consciousness from the mind
Yeah.
by focusing on the body, grounding ourselves in the physical sensations of the present moment, almost like using the body as an anchor to stop the mind from drifting.
And that's a powerful technique.
Yeah.
The raw material also emphasizes the importance of the body, specifically the energy centers, and the flow of life forced through them.
Mm.
So both sources seem to be saying that becoming more aware of our physical sensations can actually help us anchor ourselves in the now, and maybe even create space for a deeper level of consciousness.
Oh, that's interesting. And then Tolle takes it even further with this idea of the pain body, which he describes as like trapped life energy, fueled by our identification with the ego.
Mm-hmm.
He even says it's this energy field that actually feeds on negativity.
That's a powerful image, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And if we connect that to the bigger picture, well, the pain body could be seen as, an accumulation of unresolved emotional patterns,
Yeah.
traumas, both personal and, well, even collective.
Right.
Think of it as a reservoir of negative energy that can be triggered by, external events or even just our own thoughts.
Oh, wow. And he gives some pretty intense examples. Like he asks why civilization has become so self-destructive.
Yeah.
And he suggests it's because of this collective pain body, this unconscious negativity driving harmful actions. That's a bit sobering.
It is, but it's important to remember that both Tolle and the raw material offer ways to, address and even transcend this pain body.
Okay.
Tolle talks about becoming aware of it, observing it without judgment.
So not about suppressing those negative emotions, but more like acknowledging them with a sense of detached awareness.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we are not our pain body. We have a choice. We can choose how we respond to it. And the raw material emphasizes practices like, meditation and service to others as paths to healing and transformation. So there are, concrete steps we can take to shift those patterns.
So it's like by becoming conscious of this pain body, we can start to loosen its grip, create some space for healing and transformation.
It's exciting.
And Tolle suggests that as we disentangle ourselves from the mind and its dramas, even the need to be right starts to lose its hold.
That's such a profound shift in perspective.
Yeah.
It really speaks to the liberation that comes from recognizing, well, the illusory nature of the ego. And the raw material echoes this, emphasizing the importance of, moving beyond judgment, cultivating compassion.
So we can finally let go of those endless mental arguments, the
Yeah.
power struggles, all that stuff that just drains our energy and creates conflict.
Mm-hmm.
It's about finding true strength within ourselves, rooted in being,
Hmm.
rather than in needing to, well, dominate others.
That raises such a vital question, though. If the ego is so focused on control, on external validation, how does that play out in our relationships with others? I mean, our relationships, they often become mirrors, right? Reflecting our own egoic
Oh,
patterns.
that's a good point.
And Toll suggests that true love, well, it can only really flourish when we're free from those egoic attachments and the pain body.
Hmm.
It's not about, finding someone to complete us, but about recognizing the wholeness within ourselves and then choosing to share that with another person.
So it's less about needing someone and more about choosing to be with someone.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. That makes sense, but it sounds pretty challenging too.
it is challenging. It requires a lot of self-awareness
Yeah.
and a willingness to, do our own inner work.
Right.
Both Tolle and the Ram material emphasize this idea of conscious relationships,
Mm.
where individuals come together not to fill a void, but to support each other's growth.
But relationships aren't always easy, are they?
No, they're not.
And Tolle acknowledges that. But he cautions against using relationships as a crutch for our own unhappiness.
Yeah, and he brings up a really interesting point about how past traumas, personal and collective, can create blockages
Yeah.
in our ability to experience, well, genuine intimacy.
Oh, okay.
Like he talks about the collective female pain body and the suffering women have endured throughout history.
Yeah, wow. The powerful reminder of how those unseen wounds, personal or collective, can really shape our present experiences.
Absolutely. And this connects to the raw materials discussion of densities
Hmm.
and how, the experiences of past lives can actually carry over into our present incarnation. It's like we're carrying this invisible baggage
Hmm.
that can impact our relationships if we're not aware of it.
So by healing those past wounds, we can create a more conscious and fulfilling present, both for ourselves and, well, the people we're in relationship with.
That's the idea. And this leads to another fascinating parallel between Tolle and the raw material, the exploration of time as a construct. Remember how Tolle asserts that time is an illusion? That the present moment is all we ever have. He has that striking quote, "There is never a time when your life is not this moment." Really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. It's one of those things that's hard to grasp mentally, but when you really tune into it, it feels so true.
Exactly. And the raw material also delves into the nature of time, describing it as a dimension intertwined with space to form a, space-time continuum. They even introduce the concept of negative time-space, which, well, adds another layer of complexity.
Negative time space. Okay, now we're getting into some seriously mind-bending territory. Can you unpack that a little?
Sure. Think of it this way. If positive time space is the realm of, linear time and physical manifestation, negative time space is more like a realm of pure potentiality, where everything exists simultaneously. It's hard to wrap our minds around because we're so conditioned to experience time as linear.
Yeah, that is a tough one.
Yeah.
So how do these mind-boggling ideas about time connect to our everyday experience? How can we access this now that both Tolle and the raw material talk about?
Well, both sources suggest that by freeing ourselves from the ego's obsession with the past and future, we can tap into that deeper dimension of being. Tolle talks about the inner purpose of life, which has nothing to do with where we're going or what we're doing, but everything to do with the quality of our consciousness in this moment.
So it's about appreciating the journey itself rather than being fixated on the destination.
Exactly. And the raw material suggests that our thoughts and actions in the present moment actually influence the trajectory of our spiritual evolution. It's like we're constantly creating our reality with each choice we make.
So even though the concept of time might seem abstract, both sources are pointing to its practical implications for, well, how we live our lives and navigate our spiritual growth.
Absolutely. And this brings us to another key theme that runs through both Tolle's work and the raw material: surrender.
Tolle definitely emphasizes surrendering to what is,
Mm.
saying it's crucial for creating positive change. But I think a lot of people struggle with this concept. Doesn't surrendering mean becoming passive? Wouldn't we lose the motivation to act?
That's a common misconception. Both sources emphasize that surrender doesn't mean becoming passive or inactive. Remember Tolle's distinction between reacting from the conditioned mind and responding from a place of conscious presence. He asks, in that state, your mind is free of concepts, including the concept of nonviolence. So who can predict what you will do?
That's a provocative question. It suggests that surrender can actually lead to a more authentic and powerful action because it's not clouded by, egoic motives or fear.
Precisely. The raw material echoes this, emphasizing that true power comes from aligning with the will of the Creator, which is always in harmony with the highest good of all. It's about acting from a place of love and wisdom rather than from, fear or self-interest.
So surrender isn't about giving up our power. It's about accessing a deeper source of power, one that's aligned with the universe.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a very different way of looking at it.
It is, and it leads to another key concept, the idea of enlightenment as a process of awakening rather than a destination.
Yeah, I remember Tolle talking about two paths to enlightenment through suffering, which he
Mhm.
calls the way of the cross, and through consciously choosing to, relinquish attachment to the past and future.
Yes, and he suggests that we no longer need to experience pain when we make the conscious choice to dwell in the present moment.
So we have a choice. We can either keep repeating the same patterns of suffering or step into a new way of being. That's rooted in present moment awareness and, well, alignment with our true nature.
Yeah.
Do you think most people choose the path of suffering?
It's hard to say, but the raw material offers an interesting perspective on this with their description of the harvest.
Okay.
It's a, cyclical process where souls are assessed based on their level of spiritual evolution.
Oh, interesting.
Both Tolle and the raw material seem to be suggesting that while suffering can be a catalyst for growth, it's not the only path. We can choose to awaken consciously.
That's empowering,
Yeah.
but it also puts a lot of responsibility on us to make those conscious choices.
It does. And this brings us to another fascinating theme that both sources explore, the concept of service to others as a key aspect of spiritual evolution.
Tolle definitely talks about that. He says that only those who have transcended the world can bring about a better world. And he emphasizes the healing power of compassion.
And the raw material delves into this idea even more deeply, describing service to others as a path to, well, higher densities of consciousness.
Hmm.
They even suggest that positively oriented beings are naturally drawn to helping others, while negatively oriented beings seek to control and manipulate others for their own gain.
So there's this fundamental choice we're all making to either use our energy for selfish purposes or to contribute to the well-being of the whole.
That seems to be the crux of it. And it's not just about doing good deeds, it's about cultivating an inner state of being that radiates love, compassion, and understanding. It's about becoming, a beacon of light in a world that often feels dark and chaotic.
That makes sense. While Toya focuses primarily on individual transformation, the raw material delves into the collective aspects of spiritual evolution. Like they talk about social memory complexes, where souls share their experiences, lessons learned, contributing to the overall growth of consciousness. How do you see these individual and collective journeys interacting?
That's a fascinating question. It seems that our individual journeys are, intertwined with a larger cosmic tapestry of interconnectedness. Like each of us is a unique note in a grand symphony. And the quality of our individual notes contributes to the overall harmony of the piece.
That's a beautiful analogy.
And this brings us to one of the most intriguing aspects of the raw material, their discussion of extraterrestrial beings
Oh, okay.
and their role in our evolution. Have you ever considered the possibility of contact with beings from other planets?
I have to admit, it's always been something I've been curious about.
Yeah, it's definitely out there. But the raw material takes it a step further. They talk about the Confederation of Planets, this group of benevolent beings dedicated to serving others. And also about the Orion group, a group of negatively oriented beings who seek to control and manipulate others. It sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
It does. But what's fascinating is that the raw material describes these extraterrestrial beings as existing on different densities of consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
which aligns with their whole framework of spiritual evolution.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not just talking about physical beings from other planets,
Mm-hmm.
but also about beings who are on different levels of consciousness, just like we are.
Exactly. And they suggest that these extraterrestrial beings can influence us in both positive and negative ways, depending on their orientation. And, well, our own level of awareness, it's like we're living in this multidimensional reality where we're constantly interacting with energies and beings from different realms.
Whoa, with a lot to take in. So how do we navigate this complex landscape? Tolle seems to offer a simple yet powerful answer: present moment awareness.
He does. And the raw material supports this, suggesting that by cultivating a strong sense of presence, we become more discerning of the energies we allow into our lives and will make choices that are aligned with our highest good.
Mm.
It's like developing a spiritual immune system that protects us from harmful influences. and helps us resonate with those that support our growth.
Makes sense. It's about becoming conscious of our energy
Mm-hmm.
and aligning with the frequencies that, well, resonate with love, wisdom, and truth.
Mm-hmm.
So if we shift our focus from the external to the internal, what insights do Tolle and the raw material offer about the nature of the self? It's funny. It feels like we've been talking about the self this whole
We
time, but it's
have.
been more about like recognizing those false layers, the
Yeah.
ego and the pain body and all that. What do these sources actually say about who we really are beneath all that?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head, both Tolle and the raw material. They really encourage us to go beyond those surface identifications.
Mm.
To discover our true nature, Tolle talks about the ego as a false sense of self, just a collection of thoughts and beliefs that we mistake for who we are.
So if the ego isn't the real us, then who are we?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The raw material describes the true self as a spark of the creator, an
Mhm.
eternal being of light and love. They suggest that we're all fundamentally connected to the source, and our journey is all about remembering and reclaiming that connection.
Oh, wow. Like we've forgotten our true identity, and these teachings are just reminding us of who we really are.
Exactly. And this remembering, it's not just an intellectual exercise.
Right.
It's a profound shift in consciousness
Yeah.
that changes how we experience ourselves and the world around us.
So it's not just about acquiring knowledge, it's about embodying it, like becoming it.
Precisely. And this brings us back to the power of the present moment.
Okay.
Both Toy and the raw material. They suggest that the present moment is the gateway to this deeper knowing,
Hmm.
to experiencing our true nature.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? How does being present actually connect us to who we really are?
Sure, think of it this way. When our minds are caught up in the past or the future, we're essentially disconnected from the present moment,
Hmm.
from the only place where life is actually happening.
Right, right.
And in that state of disconnection, well, it's easy to lose touch with who we really are.
Yeah.
But when we bring our attention fully into this future, now we
Yeah.
step out of those mental narratives and connect with a deeper level of being.
It's like we're dropping the baggage of the past and the anxieties of the future and just being here now.
Exactly. And in that space of presence,
Yeah.
we have the opportunity to access a deeper wisdom, a knowing that transcends the limitations of the egoic mind.
So the present moment is not just about enjoying the moment. It's about accessing a deeper truth about ourselves and our connection to the universe.
You got it. And this leads to another fascinating concept that bridges both Tolle's work and the material, the power of choice.
Choice.
Tolle talks about how the ego, trapped in psychological time, limits our choices.
Mhm.
But when we access the power of the Tao, now we reclaim our ability to choose consciously.
It's like we break free from those conditioned patterns and open ourselves up to like a whole wider range of possibilities.
Exactly. And the raw material frames this choice as one between service to self and service to others.
Okay.
They suggest that each thought, word, and action is an opportunity to align with either a separative or a unifying consciousness.
So it's not just about what we do, but the underlying motivation, the energy behind our actions.
Precisely. And this brings us back to the power of the present moment again.
Okay.
By cultivating awareness in the now, we become more conscious of the choices we're making, the energy we're radiating, and the reality we're shaping.
It's like we become the captains of our own ships, steering our course with intention and purpose. But if we're all ultimately connected, as both sources suggest, how much free will do we actually have? Doesn't that contradict the idea of individual choice?
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of a paradox that both Toll and the raw material acknowledge.
Okay.
On the one hand, we are all interconnected, part of a unified field of consciousness. But on the other hand, we also have the gift of free will, the ability to choose our thoughts, feelings, and actions.
So how do we reconcile those two seemingly contradictory ideas?
Maybe it's not about reconciling them, but about holding both perspectives simultaneously.
Okay.
We can recognize our interconnectedness, our oneness with all that is, while also honoring our individual capacity to choose our own path.
It's like we're both waves and the ocean, individual expressions of a larger unified whole.
That's a beautiful way to put it, and this understanding can be incredibly liberating because it frees us from the burden of feeling solely responsible for everything that happens in our lives.
Yeah.
We can surrender to the flow of the universe while also recognizing our power to co-create our reality through the choices we make.
That makes me think about surrender again. We talked about how it's not about becoming passive, but about aligning with a deeper source of power. Can you say more about that? What does it mean to surrender in a way that empowers us?
It's about letting go of the ego's need to control, to
Hmm.
force things to happen according to our, limited perspective.
Right.
It's about trusting that the universe has a plan
Okay.
that's far grander than anything we can conceive of, and allowing ourselves to be guided by a wisdom that's greater than our own.
So it's about surrendering to the flow of life, trusting that we're exactly where we need to be, even when things don't go according to plan.
Yes, and it doesn't mean we become passive or give up on our dreams.
Right.
It's more about aligning our will with the will of the universe, about recognizing that sometimes the path unfolds in unexpected ways.
It's about surrendering to the mystery, embracing the unknown, and trusting that the journey itself is the destination.
Beautifully said. And this brings us full circle to the core message of both Tolle and the raw material,
Hmm.
the importance of awakening to our true nature, to
Yeah.
the love and wisdom that reside at the heart of our being.
It's been such an incredible journey exploring these two sources. What are some final takeaways you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is that we have a choice.
Hmm.
We can choose to remain trapped in the ego's illusions,
Yeah?
of separation, fear, and limitation, or we can choose to awaken to our true nature, to the love, wisdom, and power that reside within us.
And that awakening is not some distant goal. It's a process that begins right here, right now, in the present moment.
Exactly. By cultivating present moment awareness, surrendering to the flow of life, and choosing love over fear, we can unlock our true potential and contribute to the creation of a more beautiful and loving world.
It's been amazing having you here today.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Eckhart Tolle and the raw material. It's been a truly profound exploration. And until next time, keep questioning, keep seeking, and keep shining your light.